I'm sorry. You rode the magic carpet, so it's like, oh, the digital magic carpet ride. We're
I
here.
was I was waiting for the cue in music, like do 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 do
Yeah.
do
I'm
do.
actually working on intro music with one of the guys that watched the
Yeah.
summit the other day and was commenting, Joshua, he's going to help me with creating intro music.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that too. So I will be like a real grown up podcaster. I am patting myself on the back because
You should.
24 hours, 18 episodes, and now they're live.
Yeah.
It's so cool. Yeah, so cool. So, yeah. Well, thank you for coming. Welcome
Thank
to Breaking the Silence,
thank you for
conversations
having me.
on addiction, grief, trauma, everything. It's all the things that people don't talk about, and healing and walking through that process to not be stuck. And by sharing our experiences and our stories, we get to help other people do that and let them realize that, hey, you're not alone. There are other people going through similar things
Yeah.
that are willing to talk and willing to support. So that's the whole purpose for this. So tell me about you. I know some of your story, but whatever comes through, whatever you feel like talking about, and like I said, I'll interact, but and I'll ask questions as they come. But
All right. Well, I will. I'm gonna I'm gonna look up to visualize, and I'm gonna get comfortable, and I'll stick to the highlights. How about that? How
that
about that?
works. That
Okay,
works.
perfect. So I've been coaching people for over a decade now. And I used to help people try to find their life purpose and things like that. And it was very passionate. I loved doing that work. But I was also working in a soul draining job of corporate America at the same time. Back in 2023, my marriage collapsed, and my ex wife said she was moving across the country and I wasn't invited.
Oh,
And yeah, so as you can assume, that devastated me and kind of left me broken.
right.
Um, not to not to dive too deep into it, but I got to a point very, very quickly where I was going to take my own life. And I don't know, I'm not, waxing into religion or anything like that. Something stopped me, and I realized that I was given a second chance, and if I don't take it and fix my life, I wasn't going to get another one. So I started the process to climb out of the nightmare that I was living in, and healed myself. I got support. I signed up for a program. It was the first time I'd ever signed up for a personal development program, and it helped a lot. But it was also me taking the steps to be willing to sit in my grief and be willing to take action despite the grief as well, that helped me kind of continue to move forward. And I was kind of able to heal in a record time. And I'm going to jump back about 20 years, but when I was first engaged, when I was early on in my life, I was in my young 20s. I caught my fiance at that time, and she had cheated on me. Caught them in bed together, so that was a traumatic experience,
Wow.
and um, it left me messed up for years, where I was using alcohol to like get through the day and get through the night and just to be able to sleep. So I was screwed up from that for about 5 years. Back to my marriage, um, I healed from that in about 4 months to where I was able to kind of move forward consistently and like what most people would consider normally.
Right.
Um, in 2024, though, I realized it was kind of like 2024 wasn't a bad year, but it was almost like a fugue state or a zombie-like year in some respects. Like I was helping people through their own heartbreaks, and that was great. It wasn't until earlier this year that I realized like there was a lot of other stuff that was buried that I hadn't addressed, and I I took myself through that to kind of break those shackles and break free of all of that pain and trauma that I had been holding on to and carrying even from childhood. And 2025 hasn't necessarily been an easy year, but it's been a more joy-filled year than I've experienced in a long time. So it's incredible, um, the power of intentional healing can have. And the reason I'm excited to be on this podcast is, society kind of trains us as men, like, suck it up, right? Where it's suck it up, pretend like nothing bothers you.
Yep, you
And
don't talk about emotions, you don't show them, you don't feel them.
and yeah, and what's crazy is I was doing a little bit of research earlier today, and so many guys are walking around with anger issues. They're just like ticking time bombs. And I was like, but anger is an emotion.
Yeah,
However, it's considered a manly emotion. And that's why so many guys are fine with anger issues, but it's not healthy because it's poisonous
yeah,
unless you're using that anger towards action. So many guys end up suffering in silence like I did. And after a breakup or an identity collapse like I had, and it creates a cycle where it's like they don't want to be a burden on others, whether it's friends or family, of what they're going through. And they're also afraid of being vulnerable because they don't think that they can cry or show emotions or do
right,
anything like that. And it leads to a point where they think their only way out is the end.
right. And men asking for help and for support is not manly. And they've been taught you don't talk about those things, you don't get help, and you don't ask coaches, you don't ask anybody for support.
It's so funny you brought that up. I was just in a conversation before this, and we talked about, the person I was speaking with said asking for help is what healthy people do, and I amended that and said asking for help is what strong people do,
Yes,
because humanity wasn't just a single person that
right,
created all of civilization. It was a collective effort. What there was a phrase, and I'm going to get it wrong, but something about the fact that human beings have the like the solo prowess of a tiger and the collective prowess of the ants, right? Because like ants create amazing colonies,
oh
but
yeah,
it's a collective effort. At the
right,
same time, we as individuals, we have that ability to be strong on our own. But the problem is, even a tiger, if it gets wounded or injured, it can't survive on its own.
right,
And it has to come back to the collective to heal, to grow, to become strong once more. And then, yeah, go off, do your own thing, fuck off, whatever, whatever
right,
you want to do, kind of thing.
exactly,
But a wounded tiger isn't like the whole belief of being self-made, or I can't rely on anybody but myself. It's a fear-based mindset that keeps people trapped, but it's the brain just trying to keep people safe because they experienced emotional pain and they don't want to go through that emotional pain again by getting rejected if they ask for help. I had to ask for help and sign up for that program. I did. It was not cheap, um, but I was able to join a community of other people who were on the same path of personal development. And I had joined other programs as well. Shortly after she left, I tried joining a program that said it was guaranteed to save my marriage. It was a lie. The program success rate was well below 50%. So they
right.
were tricking people with a lie who were
Well,
vulnerable.
you can't guarantee to save a marriage unless both parties want
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. And at the time though, I didn't know that. I
Right,
was just like, I'm going to, I'm looking for the way out. I'm looking for that easy fix, the band-aid that's going to take all the pain, the magic pill that's going to take all the pain away.
Yeah.
And I didn't find a magic pill, but what I instead found was a path that does work, but it requires walking through the fire.
Yeah. Well, and grief does that. That's when we have that deep grief. It even if it seems like a trivial thing, like a loss of a job or you're grieving previous versions of yourself, it still can cause that deep grief.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to lean into that. And that's why I call it a portal, because you have to lean in and you have to walk through it. You have to make that conscious choice every single time.
It's so funny because I know on Monday during the summit we were talking about grief, and human beings can grieve anything
Oh, yeah.
because grief is loss. So
Right.
if I drop and break my favorite coffee cup, I can
Right.
grieve it.
Yeah.
We grieve the loss. We grieve the pets that pass away. We
Yeah.
grieve children moving away. We grieve
The
you know
expectations we have of our children.
the expectations that we have of everybody but
Yes.
ourselves is it blows my mind because and this is something that I learned earlier this year because it was something that I struggled with as well. It's so easy for us to have expectations of how we want other people to act but not hold ourselves to those same expectations. And again, this is our minds trying to keep us safe, because if we hold ourselves to those same expectations, we then have to confront the fact that we're failing.
Right.
Whereas when we hold others to those expectations, it allows us to say, if things aren't going well, this is somebody else's fault.
Right.
And this is what causes, the collapse of identity in men, is in women. It causes the collapse of relationships, is the fact that we in society today, I think we have an epidemic of reduced self-confidence, especially among
Mhm.
men. And you can find the most cocky or arrogant man walking down the street who has a pattern of breaking promises he keeps to himself and ends up projecting his own inner issues onto others as a result.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not as much a confidence issue as it is a self love issue.
Yeah, and the reason I call it
They
confident,
kind of go hand in hand.
they absolutely do. The reason I call it the reason I call it confidence is, target audience. Men,
Yeah,
they don't necessarily want to hear self-love, but you're absolutely
true.
right.
Yeah,
And I guess the easiest way to say it is something simple. For example, um, every morning I'm going to wake up and drink a bottle of water. Now, if I do that, I'm honoring a promise that I'm keeping to myself. And if I honor that promise, it does mean that I love myself. But it
yes,
also, because I'm honoring that promise, that will build my confidence because I'm able to
yes,
trust myself, which is an act of love. And it's also an act of confidence. And so confidence and self-love, I agree, do go hand in hand. It's just me choosing the language for my target
yeah,
audience versus yours.
exactly. Right. Well, and I preach so much about radical self love and audaciousness because that's the mindset you need to have because self love isn't about the bubble baths and the spa days and all that bullshit. Yes, those are nice and those are things we should be doing for ourselves anyways. But true, deep, radical, audacious self love is not about the external. It's about the commitments to ourselves. It's about taking that time to go internal and say, okay, where are the pieces and parts of me that I don't like? And shining a light on those and saying, okay, thank you for the purpose you served, but I no longer need that. I love you for what you did for me, but we're past that. We've grown out of that. And that helps get out of that stuckness.
I would agree. Now you and I will strongly disagree on the bubble baths part because I don't do bubble baths.
Oh, well,
but
I love them.
but
I love them.
I do agree that self-compassion, self-love, um, trusting ourselves, valuing ourselves and having that self-worth, they're all important. And I also agree with you. The inner work necessary, sometimes it does require, as you were saying, parts work and being able to identify those parts of ourselves and find where those chains are holding us back, where we're tethered
Yeah,
to the past, either from the lessons that we caught or the experiences that we went through that shaped our identity. But another thing is, it doesn't have to be massive action either. When you talk about
right.
find the parts of ourselves that we don't love anymore, like I'm a little overweight right now, and that's fine. I don't love it about myself, but at the same time, I don't have to say, that's it. Tomorrow morning, I'm getting on a treadmill for 12
Right.
hours.
Right.
Rather, because massive action is is what leads more people to collapse and burn out
Mhm.
faster and spiral down further than simply saying, okay, what's one small step that I can take today to
Right.
move in the direction of keeping promises to myself, as well as marching towards this goal that I have of
Right.
improving myself. When it comes to getting through grief, so many people, so many guys get, either stuck in bed where they're unable to move. And this was a fascinating point that I found earlier, is there's two types of behaviors that men face when going through, an identity collapse after a breakup or divorce. The majority of men will take the position of, I just try to keep busy so I don't think about it.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine until you stop moving. And then that's when it all collapses back in on you again and you're overwhelmed.
Uh-huh.
The
Right.
other guy is the one that feels caught in the storm and he's overwhelmed by his pain and he's unable to do anything. The key to moving forward through that grief and what I call the crucible is integrating those two pieces. For the guy that always tries to that tries to keep moving, the important thing for him is to embrace the silence between the notes. And what I mean by that is those quiet moments in between his actions, or even creating space in between his
Right.
actions to allow himself to open his mind and open his heart to say, how am I feeling, and am I willing to feel it? If he's not willing to feel it, he's essentially saying, I don't want to become a better person. I want to stay stuck where I am. And for the man that's stuck and has no energy and things like that, his is actually easier, which is just starting small.
Right.
Getting out of bed and honoring the fact that he got out of bed even though he doesn't want to, and being willing to say, I'm going to move forward today. I don't necessarily want to, but I'm going to move forward doing X, Y, and Z today. And they don't even need to be big actions. You got out of bed today. That's a huge win, especially if it's the first
Right.
time in 3 days that you got out of bed. Honor that and celebrate
Yeah.
it. And you can still allow yourself to feel, but we just, the, for both types of men in both situations, the struggle they face though is that denial of how they feel. Like they don't want to
Right.
feel that way. So it's almost like pretending it doesn't happen, or as long as they stay moving or stay stuck,
They don't have
then
to think about it.
they don't have to address it.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's that acknowledgement is that first step of, I can lean into this if I acknowledge it. But if I deny it, then I don't have to face it.
Yeah.
And women are the same way.
And I know that
We react different ways, but it's the same act. It's the same kind of programming. You know, men were taught you don't ever show emotions, and women were taught that we are too emotional and to shut the fuck up. And so we're all shoving it down.
I would agree that there is definitely an overlap in society today. Where I would disagree though is um, it's much more accepted and commonplace in society for women. Now,
Yes.
I do know women who tend to isolate when they struggle, so I'm not in any way
Oh, yeah.
denying that happens. I know I've got friends, I've got people I know, and I think even in your own specific situation, you isolated for a time too.
Oh, yeah.
So I do know that happens with women. Where I though think the difference comes is because of that societal conditioning and just because of the differences in the makeup between men and women. Women are more comfortable with the idea of therapy because it feels supportive and talking and provides that validation, whereas men see it as talking about feelings. And
Right.
what men don't want to do is talk about feelings. And that's why
Exactly.
when I work with guys, it's funny um, because I with several of the people that I've worked with, they were hesitant when starting, and they're like, "Are you going to ask me like how something feels?" And I said, "Let me be clear. I said I don't give a shit how you feel." And they kind of looked at me a little weird, and I said, "I really don't." I said, "My goal and my responsibility is to help you achieve the results that you want to achieve." I said, "How you feel does not matter, preventing you from getting the results that you want to achieve. And then we'll address what's causing that. But otherwise, I mean, emotions are data points. They're not the be
Right.
all end all. You know, I
Well, and the typical emotion or feeling is only has a cycle of about 90 seconds that it's supposed to move through us.
right.
So our feelings change that fast. Every minute and a half can be totally different.
Hmm. And
So what
that's
I'm
what's
feeling right now, if I continue to talk about it, that's going to stay there. So if we move, it helps that move quicker.
and you're absolutely right. Um, I was talking with somebody not too long ago who had mentioned they were talking with somebody else and they were just kind of complaining and it made them get more and more angry as a result. And it goes back to that whole scientific study, and this is about workplaces but it does have overlap, which is if you sit in close proximity of a positive worker, your own positivity and productivity goes up by up to 15%.
Mhm.
But if you sit in proximity of a negative worker, your own productivity and mood will drop by as much as 30%. It's
Right.
easy for us to have a downward spiral than it is to have an upward spiral.
Right.
And when you, to your point of talking about those things, yes, if you are talking about those negative emotions, you will tend to come up with other examples that match that emotion, as opposed to like, okay, you're feeling pissed off right now. What's the action you want to take
Right.
to utilize this emotion or to get through this emotion? Because you're right, our emotional state can change in up to 90 seconds. About emotional states though, and I'm going to segue here, I was I do a lot of support in different various Facebook groups, but this one guy said this comment and he's like, men are logical and women are emotional. And I was thinking about it for a minute and I realized this is one of the biggest lies that we've been sold for decades,
Yeah.
because men are not inherently more logical and women are not inherently more emotional, but rather it was a stereotype that was designed um, based on old patterns that no longer exist in society, where emotions were considered to be like, that, keep that in the house
Right.
kind of thing, and logic is in the workplace. All men are emotional. It's just that how we express emotion is typically going to be different than how women express emotion. But a
Right.
guy who has no emotions at all will have a reduced logical capability and a reduced rationality compared to a woman who's emotionally grounded. And so, but the fact is, society continues to tell us, like, oh, men aren't supposed to show emotion, men aren't supposed to have emotions. And what I tell everybody I work with is, when you try to suppress your emotions for too long, you will have an explosive reaction. I said, you're going to have,
Right. They control you then.
yeah, you're going to have anger issues. And I said, you're going to have outbursts. And the more you try to suppress your negative emotions, the more you end up suppressing your positive emotions. And so the more miserable you are as a result, because you won't even experience happiness or joy.
Right. Right. And another huge lie and thing that we all believe, when we get in those states that are per se negative, when we're going through grief or we're going through anger and sadness, thinking that we don't have the capacity to also hold joy, because we can. We can hold those opposing emotions at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
When my boys send me signs, that is awesome and it lifts my vibration, but I'm also sad because I still miss them.
Yeah.
But I can hold both of those and I can experience both emotions at the same time. And that is something that most people get stuck on, is I'm too sad, I'm too full of grief, or I'm too angry that I can't even see the beauty and the joy and the love that is also in my life.
What's the five stages? It's denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And
I think there's way more, but
well, there was a graphic I found online that kind of showed, like, yes, most people think it's going to be this curve, right? It's this U
yeah,
curve. It's more like a tangled ball of Christmas lights, and
it's exactly
you can go from and what I've told people is, you can go from depressed in the like, you can go from denying it in the morning, to bargaining in the afternoon, to depressed in the evening, to the next day waking up pissed off. And then in the
right.
afternoon, you think you're accepting it, but then you go back into denying it ever happened. The key, though,
Right.
is, and when you realize you've accepted it, kind of to use your specific situation and relate it to the grief that men go through, is when you found that new normal that you can move in. And for me, and for many men, the struggle that we face most and what keeps us stuck is wanting to go back and wanting to return to life the way it was before that traumatic event happened, where she left or the relationship ended. And that, you know while the pain we're experiencing is very real and tangible within our bodies, the challenge remains, though, that we remain stuck because we're in denial of wanting to move forward, because we're still wanting to go backwards. And
Right.
that's what leaves men stuck, and not wanting to feel like a burden, not wanting to talk about anything that happened at all, being a tough nut to crack, or thinking there's no way you can heal to move forward at all. These are all things that just, unfortunately, they're silent killers of men,
Yeah.
because the modern man is very performative, and when he gets into a relationship, tends to mold his identity around that relationship. And as soon as the relationship is gone, he's like, I don't know who I am anymore, because that's what happened to me.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the common denominator is men want to fix things. So having that significant other that you can help and serve and fix things for, and then it's suddenly gone, you never thought about fixing yourself or your own circumstances because you were worried about everybody else around you.
You're right about the fixing aspect, but it's the performative aspect. And what I mean by that is men are very externally focused. That's
Yes.
why men struggle in relationships at times. Instead of being present in the moment, men are very tangibly focused on getting money, which is a future pacing. They're focused on their career advancement. They're focused on all things instead of being present as it's happening, and that's what causes it to neglect and fall apart. Um, something it was a revelation that came to me earlier today. I think a lot of men, myself included, because this is something I recently learned about myself, we're not conditioned to be grateful for what's going right. Instead, we're conditioned to focus on what's going wrong. And that's to your
Or when
point,
the next shoe is going to drop. Yeah.
of fixing things. With that fixing mindset, you're always looking for the problems, and you're not
Yes.
taking taking time to appreciate what's working well. And so I know for me, this caused me to then focus on issues instead of enjoying and celebrating that my relationship that I had in the moment and spending time there. So I was never really present, and I don't blame her for leaving. I'm happier now, but it took a lot of work to get to this point.
Right.
But she felt neglected as a result,
Yeah.
and
Right.
that was because of the fact that I kept looking for other things, and that's kind of the story that I hear from other men too. Is um, you know, I was focused on this and this and this and this and this, and it's like, well, how did she feel? What
Right.
was she telling you? And it's like, well, I don't know. And it's like, yeah, that's the problem. That's maybe why she left. But being that fixer and being focused on those tangible things, those external factors, it allows men to avoid the necessary work of reclaiming their wholeness and being able to say, like, I'm a complete person as myself. I can be happy by myself, and a relationship should add to my happiness instead of being my
Right.
source of happiness.
Exactly. Yeah. And I fell into that because I was a people pleaser and I liked the bad boys and I thought that I could fix them and wound up in 30 years of abusive marriages and and then raised my kids in all that trauma. So I totally get that. And those men are already, they're already in addiction. They already have unprocessed trauma. And that's why they had that bad boy stigma because they were already self medicating and having trauma response in their lives. And there was nothing I could do to fix them. But I didn't know that, and they blamed me because things weren't right. So if I loved harder, if I did more, if I acted better and completely lost who I was over the years and absolutely destroyed my self esteem and my self confidence and self worth. And that took me a long, long time to heal from. And then to be able to go back and forgive and go beyond that to see, okay, what were the lessons that they were teaching me? Because I obviously chose these teachers and these experiences. So why was I there? But we fall into those patterns and we don't see them as negative. I always want to help people. I hate to see people suffering. but I have to put myself as priority first and help from overflow.
You bring up a lot of great points, and you're right. It's not our responsibility to fix other people, and for any people pleaser or any fixer, you can focus on the problems, but you can't focus on the person, because it's that person's responsibility. And to your point of those guys, it's very easy for men, but really for all people in general, to find a target, the
Yeah,
source of
yes,
their pain, because as soon as we as soon as we say, like, it's not the other person's fault, it's something within myself, that's when it starts to hurt, and that's when it becomes uncomfortable, but that's where
yeah,
the resolution lies, that's where the solution lies. And that's scary for a lot of guys who aren't used to that. They're used to being able to
right.
say, like, I go to the gym and exercise to put on muscles. It's like, yeah, but you put yourself in pain in the gym. Why not just take yourself to the mental gym and put yourself in pain there to grow mentally and emotionally? But it's an unfamiliar territory, and so it's scary for a lot
Yeah,
of men. Um, as far as putting yourself first, I agree, and that's that whole, you can't pour from an empty cup.
exactly.
Um, but I would also say, and this is something that I learned a few weeks back, is you also cannot fill a cup that's full. And what I mean by that is, part of the healing process, especially for us guys, and it's a step that I call control, which is, to help with emotional regulation and honestly honoring the emotions, is so many guys going through grief after a breakup, divorce, are full of negative emotions and full of painful events and memories. And
Mhm.
trying to pour more into a cup that's full, it's just going to run over. So you have to be willing to empty that cup of all of that pain first, before you can fill it up and learn and move forward once again with, like, a newly filled cup with newly
Right.
filled substance. But so often we as guys, we remain stuck because we keep circling those same memories and those same patterns and those same beliefs. Instead of emptying it from our minds, we just play it on repeat.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's a human thing because we continue to tell ourselves those same stories over and over and over.
Yeah, yeah. It's just, when we talked about the difference between men and women, I know that because we're all human,
Oh yeah,
but
exactly.
at the same time, the women are more comfortable with seeking support systems around them.
Yes.
For guys, from a very young age, life starts to kick us in the nuts and teaches
Yeah.
us not to trust. And that, I'm not suggesting at all, but focusing on men, you figure, like, playground bullies and schoolyard bullies and things like that. We then are very quickly, or even, abuse at home, we very quickly start to learn, don't trust anybody. And the older we get, the harder it is for us to be open and honest and vulnerable. And then with the proliferation of social media and hearing stories of, like, I opened up to my girl and she broke up with me, which, it's
Right.
one in a million, but those are the stories that get traction because those are the
Yeah.
fears that people have. We don't spread stories of kindness, we spread stories of fear. And
Right.
um, as a result, this then reinforces that belief, I shouldn't trust anybody, I can't burden anybody with what I'm going through. So by the time most men tend to reach out, it's almost too late for them. Like, they're reaching out,
Yeah.
and they're at the end of the rope, and it's already fraying. So my message is pretty simple, which is, you don't succeed in this world on your own. No matter what you do, if you have customers in your business, that's somebody you need to be successful in your business. So the idea of the self-made man is just total bullshit. And men, the most successful men in the world are the ones who are willing to seek support and seek help. Not necessarily saying that they go to therapy or anything like that, but they are ones who are willing to say, hey, I need help with this. And
Right.
for men who are willing to say, who are willing to seek help and look for help after their identity collapses, those are the ones that are going to heal faster, grow stronger, and end up having a more abundant life as a result moving forward.
Right. Absolutely. And realizing that there is that before and after. And with death, grief, that's an easy point to make. There was before they died and there's after they died, and you're forever changed. But when it's a breakdown of a relationship, there isn't that, like, this is a specific date. It kind of blurs the befores and afters, but you can choose that also and say, okay, from this point on.
You bring up a really great point because you're right. With death, it's a yes no. It's a binary situation.
Yes, yes,
However, depending upon the circumstances, there's still like a lot of those unanswered questions in the sense of like,
yes,
could I have done something to prevent this? Was their
right,
death preventable? Right. And that's when the line blurs for death for so many people. Like, what could
yeah,
I have done to prevent this? And so it's no longer a binary choice. It's more of like a chunk of time. And that's
right,
to what we were speaking about as far as like the breakdown of a relationship. That's where men get stuck, is that chunk of time. Like, what was the first moment this started breaking down that I could have stopped it? Or where was the last moment that I could have done anything to stop it? But it's a false choice because it's focused on the past as though we can do anything about it moving forward.
right,
And this is actually something that all people get stuck in, but especially guys, which is, if I know the answer to this question, then it will help me heal. But it won't, because the past is already the past. And
right,
instead, what I encourage people to ask is not like, don't try to understand why don't try to understand what happened in the past. Instead, start asking yourself, who do I want to be moving forward? And
yes,
then the questions that determine why the relationship broke down or the part you played in them will be answered along the way. But as long as we remain fixated on like, oh, if I had only done this 6 months ago, then I'd still be married, right?
right,
That, because that's a mental exercise designed by your brain to keep you stuck, because your brain wants to keep the status quo.
yeah,
And as long as it keeps the status quo, then you're not healing and you're just slowly decaying. And unfortunately, that's what our brains try to do to us. So you have to punch your brain right in its meat sack and say, no, we're going to move forward.
yeah, absolutely. It's awesome. And it's a being able to stay conscious of that and aware of that. We can, I don't think anybody can do it every single moment, but we can teach ourselves to do that more often and be conscious of where are we and what thoughts do I have right now, and take inventory and make those minute shifts in the moment, because those are what are vital.
The two most powerful steps, two first steps of the program that I run, I call it the Comeback Crucible, because like we were talking about stepping into the fire. The Crucible, it's not always a pleasant experience, but it's an experience that changes you. And I know that most people want the easy way or the fast way. But I would say this program is probably the most effective way. And the reason I say that is it's 100 days and it's designed to help you go through a complete transformation. But I digress. The two most important steps, though, are control and command. And what I mean by that is for the man that tries to stay moving so that he doesn't have to think about what happened, he has to be willing to sit, and he has to be willing to that silence, because that silence is where the answers lie that he's avoiding facing, and he has to allow that storm to roll over him, because when the hurricane's coming, you can evacuate, but as soon as you come back, the damage has already been done to your home.
Right.
So it's like you still have to come back and face the damage. And then command, the second step is establishing that routine for him to where it's not just go, go, go all the time, but rather it's I'm doing these things because they're going to help me steadily march towards who I want to become. Whether that's, the small daily rituals that he wants to do. So if somebody's looking to be more fit, the routine might start with you begin by cooking yourself one single meal every single day, and that's it. And you do that over a period of time until it becomes a habit. And then once it becomes a habit, you add in another thing. It's about sustainable discipline as opposed to taking massive action and burning yourself out and being exhausted every day to where you don't want to move forward at all, because then you're just moving from always staying busy to staying stuck and not having any energy whatsoever. It's a blending of the two, but the silence between the notes and controlling those emotions and allowing them to pass through, as you had mentioned, that 90-second ritual, it's very, very important. The experiences we've gone through, and then the command and setting up the daily routine is important for men to then be able to say, I feel how I feel, but I'm going to keep moving forward with my rituals anyway, because that is who I am. And this is how we rebuild it. This is how we rebuild our identity.
And that's awesome. So, last thought that you want to leave with people, and then let us know how they can reach you, how they can get in touch with you.
Last thought. See, I thought you were going to say a last thought.
Nope.
I would say, I'll say a couple of things here. There's three types of men in the world. And the first one, I'll call him the worrier. The guy who just worries about everything, the overthinker, if you will. This is the guy who is stuck because he's always looking for that perfect solution. For that solution to solve all of his problems. He's looking for the magic pill. The problem with the worrier is he will find something that will solve his problems, but then he tells himself, that's not going to work for me. And so he talks himself out of moving forward in that direction. And that's the worrier's biggest problem, is he's not looking for a magic pill. He's looking for somebody else to fix his problems for him. He doesn't want to do the work. And it's not because he's lazy, it's because he's hurting. It's because he's afraid. But the problem with the worrier is time doesn't stop marching on. And a year from now, the worrier will be in worse shape than he is today. Then there's the wanderer. The wanderer is the type of man who's willing to move forward to, improve his circumstances, but he doesn't want it to take too long, and he doesn't want it to require too much effort. So who's like, he's always looking for the next shiny thing. But if he doesn't see the results immediately, then he goes, this isn't working. And he gives up on it and tries something else. So he's always wandering from solution to solution. The wanderer will slowly improve his life, but a year from now, he'll look back and wonder why he's not further along than he is. So his life remains relatively consistent, and meaning he doesn't change for the better. He might change a little bit for the better. He might even get a little bit worse, depending upon how he wanders.
Right.
And then there's the warrior. What differentiates the warrior from the other two is the warrior willing to acknowledge he doesn't have to do this alone. Nobody learns on their own. Nobody learns to walk or potty train or school or math or astrophysics or anything on their own, because even if you're looking at YouTube videos or reading a book, you're learning from somebody else's knowledge. So the warrior is willing to say, this is what I want, and I'm going to find the team necessary to help me achieve the results that I want. I'm going to find a team to help me achieve these goals. So he will find a tribe to help him achieve those goals, or he will build the tribe around him to help him achieve those goals. Because the warrior knows he will stumble. He knows it's going to be hard. He knows that he's going to fall at times, but that team around him is there to pick him up and remind him, this is why you want those goals. This is the goals that you said you were going to get. Let's go get them, to help keep him on track and help keep him accountable. The wanderer says, I'll figure it out on my own. And the warrior says, that's not going to work for me. So that's why they struggle. But the warrior, the guardian, the knight, whatever you want to call him, is willing to say, I know I can't do this alone, so I'm going to find the help I need to achieve these results.
Right.
A year from now, the warrior will almost always achieve his goals and vastly exceed them as a result of the fact that he's willing to ask for help. He's willing to invest in himself because he sees that the greatest asset that he has is his own mind, his own body. And as long as he continues to invest in himself, he'll never lack for anything. And the return on investment will always be greater than best. So that's my final thought. There's always help available for people who are willing to reach out and acknowledge and admit that they need and or want help. The help is available. So how people can reach me, I'm on Facebook. That's it. So yeah, I don't have Instagram or TikTok. I'm not doing any dancing videos or anything like that. I'm just on Facebook.
Well, you'll be on podcasts now after today.
So I suppose, I guess the link would be CT Mental Ninja, like for the Facebook URL. So you would put in like facebook.com and then CT Mental Ninja. But
sure.
If they find me on Facebook, shoot me a message. We can have a conversation. I have a little kind of promo that I offer periodically each month. I call it the 5-day comeback. And it's a mini version of the full course that I take guys through. And I set aside a few slots each month for some lucky individuals who I absorb the cost of that for free. So I take them through that. And then if it's a good fit, if they enjoy working with me and if I enjoy working with them, then we discuss re-enrolling in the full program moving forward. But yeah, I run the Comeback Crucible, and I got the 5-day comeback for qualifying individuals who aren't necessarily sure if coaching or seeking support is the right strategy for them.
Right. Awesome.
I actually have 3 slots available for the 5-day comeback before the new year. So if there's anybody who's interested, because we're closing out a year, so let's make 2026 your year of comeback. Right.
Absolutely. And if you can't find him, message me. I will do an introduction. I will get you in touch.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been fun.
It's been great. And share the link. You said you have people that would be interested in being guests, share that
Yeah.
link with them.
Yeah, absolutely will.
And we will, I'm sure we'll be in touch, because I know we're going to stay in touch and do some things in 26.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what warriors do.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Take care. Have a great rest of your evening, and we'll talk soon.
All right. See ya.